Salam, peace be upon you. My name is Muhammad Laik Siddiqui, the father of Holophase. Part 39, Parsimony Constraint. Keep the silent ground silent. Where we just came from, Part 38. We installed a hard firewall. No observational difference means no scientific difference. If two models produce the same licensed encoder outputs across all licensed windows, they are empirically the same. Any hidden essence that never changes a measurement is not a scientific claim. It is poetry, preference, or metaphysics, not public knowledge. Where we are now, Part 39. Now we tighten the discipline even further. Before we talk about dynamics, before we talk about laws, evolution, causes, forces, histories, we must protect the foundation from pre-dynamic smuggling. We permit only the minimum structure required for licensing. Anything extra is a gift to imagination and a theft from falsifiability. And for those who want the formal mathematical backbone behind this architecture, it can be found on Zenodo by searching Holophase. Imagine you are handed a perfectly clean blank page. Not a page that already has faint lines. Not a page that already has a watermark. Not a page that already whispers what you should draw. A truly blank page. Someone says to you, write the foundation of reality on this page. Most people begin the way human minds always begin, by pouring in familiar furniture. They write, first there is space, then time flows, then objects exist, then energy moves them, then causality links events, then the universe evolves. It feels natural because it sounds like the world we grew up inside. But the parsimony constraint asks a brutal question. Have you earned the right to write any of that yet? Have you shown how space becomes a public observable inside a licensed window? Have you demonstrated a comparator procedure for time that others can reconstruct? Have you produced an uncertainty budget for your claim that objects exist? Have you shown the Moyse model that separates cause from correlation? If you have not earned those things, then your writing is not foundation building. It is smuggling. You are sneaking in a fully furnished house while claiming you are starting from bare ground. The parsimony constraint says, start again. Erase the furniture. Keep the page blank. Add only what you absolutely must add to make the very first licensed claim possible. Add nothing because it feels right. Add nothing because it is traditional. Add nothing because it makes the story beautiful. Only what is required for licensing, and nothing more. That is what keep the silent ground silent means. The coast in the fog. To feel this in your bones, imagine a different scene. You are shipwrecked at night. The air is cold. The sea is loud. And the fog is so thick you cannot see your own hands. You know there is land. You hear waves hitting something. But you don't know where the shore is. You don't know where the rocks are. You don't know where safety is. You need a starting point, a stable reference, so you can begin mapping reality. You have limited materials. You can build one beacon. The temptation is to build a palace of certainty, a full lighthouse with a rotating beam, a foghorn, a tower, a map room, a flag that says, I understand the coast. But you don't even know where to place it. If you build too much too soon, you waste materials and trap yourself in a story. So you build the minimum that can possibly work. A single tall pole with one steady lamp. Bright enough to be seen. Stable enough to be used as a reference. That is all. Not because you hate beauty, but because you love survival. From that one steady light, you can take bearings, you can measure angles, you can mark safe routes, you can slowly expand knowledge. Later, if the map grows and the evidence demands it, you can build a full lighthouse. But first, you need the minimum reference that makes mapping possible at all. The parsimony constraint is this survival instinct applied to science. Before dynamics, before story, before metaphysical decoration, we place one light. Phi as the permission for distinction and the minimal licensing rules that make public claims possible. We do not decorate the lamp with cosmic intentions. We do not carve time and space into the pole. We do not paint purpose on the fog. Because every decoration is a door for unfalsifiable stories. What pre-dynamic smuggling really is. Let's name it clearly. Dynamics means talk about change, evolution, causes, laws, motion, unfolding history. But to talk about change, you must already have earned what counts as a thing that changes, what counts as same versus different over an interval, what counts as a clock or a before-after comparator, what counts as a measurement rather than a feeling, what counts as a law rather than a habit you noticed once. If you insert any of these as givens before you license them, you are doing pre-dynamic smuggling. It sounds like space exists before you can certify spatial comparators. Time flows before you can certify temporal reconstruction. Causality governs before you can distinguish cause from correlation in a licensed protocol. Energy is substance before you can show how energy is measured as public tally, not metaphysical stuff. Constants are built-in knobs before you can justify any knob as operationally accessible. The parsimony constraint says, before dynamics, do not sneak in anything that behaves like a stage, a script, or a narrator. Because once you sneak in a stage, you can tell endless plays. Once you sneak in a script, you can explain anything after the fact. Once you sneak in a narrator, you can make the universe sound wise. But none of that is science. Science is what survives reconstruction. Science is what has error bars. Science is what has windows and comparators. Science is what changes when experiments change. Smuggling is what stays safe from experiments by hiding behind extra words. The architect and the house. Here is a simple analogy that captures the entire heart. Imagine two architects. Architect 1 begins with fantasies. I want a turret. I want a grand staircase. I want a rooftop garden. I want secret tunnels. I want a fountain shaped like a dragon. Then, after the fantasies are fixed, they try to make a foundation fit them. What happens? The design becomes fragile. The budget explodes. The building becomes impossible to test for safety because every problem can be blamed on the complexity. This is how unlicensed foundations behave. They are rich in narrative and poor in falsification. Architect 2 begins with minimum requirements. It must not collapse. It must keep out rain. It must be stable in wind. It must be buildable with known materials. They build the simplest structure that meets these requirements. Then, only if the foundation supports it, they add features. And each feature must answer a question. Does it do something measurable? Can we test it? Does it improve function without introducing hidden failures? Can we explain its necessity? This is parsimony. Parsimony is not a hatred of beauty. It is love of structures that can carry weight. The silent ground must carry the weight of a whole universe, so it cannot be decorated with unearned assumptions. Why parsimony is a firewall, not a preference. A common misunderstanding is to treat parsimony as simplicity feels nicer. But in this architecture, parsimony is not taste. Parsimony is a firewall against narrative freedom, because narrative freedom is the enemy of falsifiability. If I give myself extra primitives before measurement, I gain extra ways to explain outcomes after the fact. I can always say, the hidden essence adjusted, the deeper layer compensated, the cosmic purpose redirected, the unseen parameter shifted. And because those extras were never licensed as measurable, they can't be pinned down, they can't be cornered, they can't be forced to confess in an experiment. So what happens? The model becomes a story machine. It can fit anything. And because it can fit anything, it predicts nothing sharply. This is the key prediction in part 39. Adding unlicensed primitives before measurement increases narrative freedom but decreases falsifiability. Not as an opinion, as a structural consequence. The two libraries. Now take a bigger picture. Imagine two libraries of explanations. Library A, the verified shelf. Only books that are tied to reconstructible procedures, uncertainty budgets, noise models, and explicit scope. The library is smaller. But what is inside can be tested, corrected, improved, and built upon. Library B, the infinite story hole. Every internally consistent story is allowed. No requirement that it cache out into licensed measurements. The library is enormous, endless books with beautiful titles. But there is no reliable way to choose which story actually corresponds to the world. If you want comfort, you go to Library B. If you want power, the power to predict, build, heal, navigate, you go to Library A. Science is Library A. The Parsimony Constraint is the librarian at the door saying, if your explanation adds entities and intentions that cannot be tested within licensed windows, it belongs in the story hole, not the verified shelf. This is not an insult to stories. Stories matter to humans. But if we mix story hole rules with verified shelf rules, we destroy public knowledge. Part 39 exists to prevent that. A concrete everyday example. The broken phone. Suppose your phone stops charging. A friend says, a mischievous spirit lives in your charger. It's angry today. Another friend says, the cable is damaged near the connector. Both are explanations, but only one is licensed, because only one produces a chain of comparator steps that anyone can reconstruct. Try a different cable, comparator. Try a different outlet, comparator. Inspect the connector for damage, comparator. Measure whether the port receives power, comparator. If the cable hypothesis is correct, you get consistent outcomes across these tests. If the spirit hypothesis is correct, it can always escape. The spirit moved. The spirit dislikes your testing attitude. The spirit hides from skeptics. That is narrative freedom. It immunizes itself against falsification. The Parsimony Constraint says, do not add spirit to the foundation of your charger theory unless it produces operational differences you can test. Otherwise, you're not explaining, you're decorating ignorance. This is exactly how pre-dynamic smuggling behaves in grand cosmology too, just with fancier words. The hidden cost of deeper explanations. People often say, my theory explains the same data, but deeper. Part 38 already cut this down. If the deeper part produces no observational difference, it is not scientifically different. Now part 39 adds a sharper blade. Before dynamics, you're not even allowed to install deeper layers unless licensing requires them, because otherwise you create a permanent hiding place for unfalsifiable stories. This is why Part 39 feels strict. It is strict because the mind is creative, and creativity is dangerous at the foundation. Creativity belongs later, after you have comparators and error bars and reconstruction. At the beginning, the silent ground must remain silent. The prediction and its test. Prediction Part 39. Adding unlicensed primitives before measurement increases narrative freedom but decreases falsifiability. You can test this pattern in any domain. Take any claim that is vague and unfenced. This crystal yields energy. This idea raises vibration. This hidden force guides outcomes. This cosmic intelligence arranges coincidences. Notice what happens when you ask for the licensing kit. What's the uncertainty budget? What's the noise model? What's the replication protocol? What's the scope? What comparator chain reconstructs the claim? Usually, the claim dissolves into poetry, or it becomes angry, or it retreats into "you wouldn't understand." That is exactly what the prediction says will happen. The extra primitives protect the claim from being pinned down. Now compared to a disciplined claim. This treatment reduces symptoms by X plus minus Y in this group, measured by this protocol, compared to this control. Even if it turns out to be wrong, it is glorious, because it can be corrected, it can be improved, it can be replaced by something better. Parsimony is not about being right immediately. It is about building a structure where wrongness can be discovered and repaired. The falsification challenge. Part 39 also gives a hard falsification challenge. Falsification. Show that unnecessary pre-dynamic structure systematically improves predictive power without tuning. This is a serious challenge, because many additions improve fit only by giving you extra knobs. If you add extra primitives that can be tuned after seeing the data, you didn't improve predictive power, you improved storytelling. To falsify Part 39, you would need something stronger. A case where adding extra pre-dynamic structure without tuning to the data produces better long-term predictions across new tests. Not it can be adjusted to match, but it predicts more sharply before the test and wins repeatedly. If someone can do that, then the added structure becomes licensable, because it cashes out into operational success. And then it is no longer unnecessary. It becomes required by licensing. That is the beauty of the firewall. It is strict but fair. It does not hate new ideas. It just demands they pay the admission fee. Prediction and falsification. The history lesson. How science actually advanced. This is not a moral lecture. It's a pattern. When physics was full of ornate metaphysical furniture, natural places, celestial perfection, ether as a necessary medium, hidden substances that explain heat, it produced beautiful stories and weak constraints. Then, again and again, science advanced by removing furniture, dropping absolute space and absolute time where they were unnecessary, dropping ether when it made no license difference, dropping vital force when mechanisms did the work, dropping phlogiston when oxygen and measurement won. The pattern is not science hates imagination. The pattern is science keeps what pays rent in prediction, everything else is evicted. Part 39 is simply the eviction rule written clearly before the house gets built. The silent ground, kept truly silent. Now return to phi. Phi is not a particle, not a field, not a substance, not a mind, not a purpose. In the undifferentiated section, phi is the permission layer, the capacity for distinction and comparability. Part 39 says, do not begin by saying phi tends to become space. Do not begin by saying phi wants complexity. Do not begin by saying phi prefers life. Do not begin by saying phi evolves toward consciousness. Those are human poems. They may later become testable hypotheses if you can connect them to licensed windows and comparator chains and measurable consequences. But at the foundation, before dynamics, they are smuggling. They turn the silent ground into a storyteller. And once the ground becomes a storyteller, you can never tell whether you are hearing reality or hearing your own wishes echoed back. The parsimony constraint is humility with teeth. It says, stop whispering into the silence. Stop painting hopes on the blank page. Stop installing furniture before you prove the room exists. The connection to part 38. Why this follows necessarily. Part 38 said, no observational difference, no scientific difference. So if you add pre-dynamic primitives that do not change licensed outputs, you have added scientific nothing. But you have not added nothing psychologically. You have added narrative power. You have added rhetorical authority. You have added the ability to say, I know what's behind it. That's dangerous. So part 39 follows. Before dynamics, add nothing that does not improve licensing, because otherwise you are manufacturing hidden explanations that can never be tested and never be removed. Part 39 protects Part 38 from being undermined by storytelling. A simple rule you can use anywhere. Here is the whole discipline in one practical question. Is this structure necessary for licensing, or is it decoration? If necessary, specify how it enters comparator chains. Specify what observations differ with and without it. Specify uncertainty budgets and scope. If decoration, remove it. Keep the ground silent. Do not confuse emotional satisfaction with scientific content. This one rule prevents enormous confusion. It prevents endless wars of interpretation where no one can ever win because no one is actually offering testable differences. What this enables next. Part 39 is not the end. It is a gate. By stripping the foundation down to the minimum, we make it sturdy enough to carry the next seals without contradiction. We are heading toward Part 40. No units, no scales. Seal, no meters, seconds, joules smuggled in early. Part 41. Topological inevitability. Closure and invariance as the seed of quantization. Part 42. Pure capacity seal. No internal knobs, no built-in constants. And ultimately, the handoff into differentiated structure where dynamics can be earned rather than assumed. Parsimony is what makes those later moves clean. It keeps the ladder from starting with a broken first rung. The carry. So carry this sentence like a compass. Keep the silent ground silent. Meaning, before dynamics, allow only what licensing demands. Every extra primitive is a hiding place for unfalsifiable stories. Narrative freedom is not progress. Predictive constraint is. Start with the minimum that enables public comparison and reconstruction. Add nothing until you can say, here is how this changes what we measure. That is part 39. Not a preference for simplicity. A discipline that prevents science from turning into mythology wearing a lab coat. And when you feel the temptation, because it will come, to say, but surely there must be something deeper behind the measurements. Remember part 38. If it never changes the measurements, science cannot touch it. So part 39 answers, then do not install it early. Do not smuggle it in. Let it remain silent until it earns a voice through license difference. Listener carry forward. Keep the silent ground silent. Salam. Peace be upon you.